I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Elliot. I think it's probably, 10 years ago? When's the first time you came, Elliot, one of these yet? And I remember when he said, hey, everybody take my email down, and I'm going to send these cool things out. And he sends out these, what do you call them every morning? Your brief?
Blog, a post?
Yeah, the little thing, and I get them, every time he sends them out, I get them. How many do I send you a week? They're very informative. Y'all need to take his email down and do it. He's just going to give you some pretty bullet point things about what's going on. Some of it's going to be fun stuff. Some of it's going to be serious stuff. But really proud to have him here. Elliot Eisenberg, if you want to come up and speak for us, brother. Yep. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I got to turn this on. Hold on one second. User error already. Yeah, right. I got a lot to talk about. A lot. We have ample time. We have until the game doesn't start till 12:45, so we got 3 hours. I mean, it's plenty. We'll cover most things. So let me begin by saying, look, the economy's in a weird spot. It really is. As I said last night at one point as I was drinking booze uncontrollably, if someone asked me, can you give me a list of 10 things that say the economy's strong? You know, the stock market's doing well. Corporate earnings so far that they've come out, 10% of the S&P 500 firms have already reported earnings. They're okay. You know, lots of GDP growth is pretty strong. That is quite strong. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I have a list, easy. And if someone said to me, ooh, can you make me a list of 5 or 10 things that tell us the economy's going to hell in a handbasket? Yeah, I could do that too. It's really strange. So what I'm going to try and do is understand why the economy can appear weak and at the same time be doing pretty well. That's the first thing we've really got to understand. Where it goes from here, yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know the future. I ended up marrying the woman who became my ex-wife. So if I knew the future, I'd have done better. So, So I'll give you my thoughts, and I also am going to spend an inordinate amount of time on tariffs. I want you all to understand, the effects on your business. Yeah, aluminum, steel, now softwood lumber, an extra 10% and so on, jacking the price up. But I want to explain to you how they work, what they do, and what the positive and negative effects are. So you'll better understand what's going on behind the scenes, not just the rise in price. I think that's the important thing. So let's begin. Look, so far, had someone asked me what the economy would be like on April 2nd, when President Trump came out with that long list of reciprocal tariffs on every country on the planet or something, and the stock market went haywire and so on, I wouldn't have thought the economy would be where it is today. It's much stronger than I thought, much healthier, doing much better. Unemployment is lower. There's been no recession. At that point, the thought of recession was very high, completely went away, and so on and so forth. And we'll get into why that is the case. That having been said, it's okay. It really is. The economy, there are problems. I'm nervous about some things. But hey, I would gladly have signed on the dotted line on April 2nd had they told me that we'd be here on April 15th or 18th, whatever it is. So that's good. Now, let's get some better feeling for what's going on. So this is GDP, right? All goods and services produced in the US. It's composed of 4 things. These 4 things aren't the same size. This is really important. C is household consumption. It's 69-70% of GDP. So what it does really matters. If it's doing fine, and it is, nothing else matters. If it starts to soften, we're hosed. Because if we don't spend as consumers going on trips, buying, pair of pants, going to a baseball game, football game, whatever the case may be, seeing Taylor Swift or something, I don't know, whatever, then we don't spend, firms don't hire, firms don't invest, firms don't build, developers don't build retail stores and so on, and we got a problem on our hands. But 69% of GDP is fine. I'm a little nervous about it. We'll get into why, but it's okay. The second term is I, corporate investment in inventory, plant, and equipment. It's ho-hum. It's okay. Nothing great, nothing awful. AI is the big savior here because AI spending is $300-400 billion a year. GDP's 30 trillion. This is over 1%, close to 1.5% of GDP. This is fantastically stimulative, like mind-bogglingly stimulative. half of all GDP growth, at least in the last 12 months, has come from AI spending. We can argue this is a good investment decision or not. I tend to think that these firms are just incinerating corporate wealth, shareholder wealth. I don't know how a firm can spend $1 trillion effectively when they've never done it before. But nonetheless, it's incredibly stimulative to our economy and has been saving our bacon, no pun intended. No, we had bacon for breakfast. It's very powerful. So that's the second term. It's about 16, 17% of GDP. It's okay. Other things are weakening on it. But the AI has really come in to save the day. The third term is government spending. That's fiscal policy, essentially, some monetary policy, of course, interest rates and so on, tax policy, whatever. We'll get into that in some detail, and that's going to depend primarily on President Trump. Because, and I may get some people angry here when I say this, but not this part, but the second part. President Trump has amassed an inordinate amount of power. And he's amassed this power more than, every president has been amassing more power. This isn't a new thing. Biden pushed the limits, Clinton pushed the limits, and so on. They've all pushed the limits. But Trump has been more successful because I think Congress has objectively been pretty craven, right? And they just let him do whatever he wants. And this is not what Congress is designed to do. Congress is not a rubber stamp. Congress is designed to keep a check on the legislature's job is to keep a check on the executive branch of government. They're not doing it. So I had an interesting listen to a podcast with two British historians. And they were asking how powerful was President Trump in the history of leaders. And they said, well, look, we're British historians. We only can talk to the English-speaking world, history of the English-speaking world. Okay. So the first guy said, he's really, really powerful. I think he's the most powerful English language leader the world has seen since the early 1600s. And the other guy said, that's ridiculous. You're not thinking about a lot of things when you say that, because it's really the late 1600s. Okay, so you get my points. I'm not making this up. This is these two British historians from Oxford or Cambridge or whatever. So maybe it's only 1700 or 1800, but whatever. So President Trump is really powerful. He's going to determine a lot of what goes on going forward. And the OBBBA was really what he wanted. He forced it on Congress, and he beat them into submission, where Johnson beat them into submission because Trump was going to beat him. Last term is exports, and it's okay. It's not spectacular, but 2026 will be stimulative. The OBBBA has some stimulative impacts in 26, less in 27, and then by 28, 29, it becomes negative. So it becomes a contractionary policy. But that's years down the road. The Iranians can nuke us first. Don't worry about it. The last term is exports minus imports. So the first term, 70% roughly. Second and third terms are each about 16 or 17. The last one, exports minus imports, the trade deficit, -3 or whatever it is, because we run about $1 trillion a year trade deficit, 900 billion, something like that. Interestingly enough, economists have never paid any attention to trade deficits, ever. It's not, we follow trade very closely. We look at the trade surplus, we look at exports, we look at imports, and on and on and on, but not the trade deficit. Because, and I'll get into this in great detail, the trade deficit has, and this is important, nothing to do with trade. The trade deficit has nothing to do with trade policy. If you think the trade policy can alter the debt, the trade deficit, you're completely wrong. They're not related. I'll give you an example, an intuitive example to explain why this might be the case. Or sort of an example to explain how non-related they are. What's your name? Dawson. So Dawson comes to me, my arm hurts. I go, oh my God, let's take an x-ray. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I feel your arm, yeah, it feels bad. Let's do an x-ray. Oh my God, Dawson, you've got a broken arm. You didn't know it was small, but we have to do something. So he says to me, okay, doc, what are we gonna do? And I go, here, have a radio. That's the relationship between trade policy and the trade deficit, is a radio and a broken arm. It's nice to have a radio. It may help you feel better and ignore the pain when you turn the radio on, but it's not going to fix your problem here, right? That's the key point. I'll get into why and discuss it in great detail and the negative consequences and the not so negative consequences of trade deficit. So we'll get there. Let's go into some details now. All right, so this is automobile sales. I know you're home builders, I got it. But I want you to reframe, and I want you to think of a car as a tenth of a house on wheels. Because a new home costs, I'm making up a number, $500,000. A new car costs $50,000. Some of them cost 60, 70. What's a Ford like 950 cost nowadays? With like 9,000 horsepower. It's like $120,000 for these fancy vehicles, right? A Ford 350 or something. It's super profitable. So this is the point. Look at this graph. These gray bars are recession bars. So this is the double dip recession of the late 1970s, early 80s. Carter's president, he appoints Paul Volcker. Volcker induces 2 recessions. A small first one, when inflation is really bad, he lowers rates and inflation comes roaring back, and then he drives us into the worst recession since the Great Depression. And what happens to car sales? They crash, no pun intended, because rates are high. When the Fed raises rates, what do they expect to happen? They expect interest-sensitive sectors of the economy to go to hell. And once they go to hell, the rest of the economy gets pulled down with it. And the most interest-sensitive sectors are cars, housing, in terms of res construction, not existing construction, I don't care about that at all, and non-res construction. So it's construction generally and cars. If they don't go down, we don't go down. If they go down, we go down. There's no evidence of going down. So that's the double dip recession. This is 1990, the jobless recovery, the S&L crisis, right? This is the dot-com bust. That's the global financial crisis, housing bust, and that's COVID. So here in COVID, we weren't making cars, we were making hearses, right? That's what's going on there, because people were dying. Now, look here, rates have been high, rates have been going up for years, right? Now they're coming down, but 22, 23 until late 24. From early 22 to late 24, rates went up, nothing but up. And car sales, pretty much, they went up. And now they're okay. I mean, they're not great, and they were artificially raised because the $7,500 tax credit on EVs, electric vehicles, ended 18 days ago. So there was this huge demand for electric vehicles, right? And the electric vehicles were a huge percentage of sales in the month of September, August as well, and so on. And so this is an overestimate of how good the car sales are, but they're okay. That's the key thing. They're okay. There's no evidence of that. That's what we want to avoid. So this is telling us the economy's okay, people are spending, they're buying cars, even though rates are high. Rates come down, certainly auto loans will cost less money, it'll be a good thing. Here's the second thing I care about. I mentioned earlier, construction activity. We're going to get into housing construction later on, so we'll have a lot of conversation there. This is overall, and this is non-res construction. So it's commercial, industrial, all kinds of stuff, right? And what you see is this, first of all, and this was the CHIPS bill and the IRA bill. So Biden passed 3 major construction bills, right? He passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. He passed the CHIPS bill, encouraging us to produce semiconductors here in the US. This guy's leaving already. I guess he likes semiconductors and wants to buy a couple of semiconductors or something for his computers or something. So actually, I think I read yesterday that the first wafers came out of the first plant that was made. It's in Phoenix. And the first US-made new generation of chips came out, the TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Company, is making. So that was the CHIPS bill and the IRA bill. The misnamed IRA bill, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden passed a couple years ago, right? And that encouraged all kinds of green energy, whether it was batteries, cars, windmills, solar panels, it didn't matter, whatever it was, just spend money, do stuff, and it was open-ended bill, so the cost could have gone astronomically high. And we can argue whether that's good policy or not. I don't want to really get into that now. We can do that later on over alcohol in the game. But that was this. Okay, now it's flat to mildly declining. Yeah, I mean, if it was doing this, I'd be really nervous. This is not really declining much. There's inflation, obviously, in the prices, so it's more in a real sense, but this isn't bad. There's no crash. If cars aren't really collapsing and this is not collapsing, we're okay. I'd prefer it to be going up, but it's okay. So this is the interest census, and we know housing construction overall is weakening a little bit, but it's also not collapsing. Everything is just doing a little bit, it's just a little down. It's like, a little downer, not a lot, So this is okay. Now, look at overall consumer spending, 69% of GDP. It's straighter than an arrow. You look at that line, it's just going straight up. There's no problem here, none. Yeah, construction is weakening a little. Car sales, or I go back to car sales, you can see here where they are now compared to before COVID. They're a little lower, they're 17 million now, they're 16 million, whatever. I'd like it higher, but it's okay. But look at this, and if you don't like, remember COVID? Probably forgot about COVID. If you want to ignore COVID, take the middle finger, close one eye, and put the finger close to your eye, and then there's no COVID. And the line goes straight up. No COVID, right. So this is really good. So the interest sensitive sectors, res construction is okay. Overall, non-res construction is declining, but a little bit like res constructions, and car sales are down a bit, but they're all fine. There's no evidence of this. That's the most important. When you see this vertical decline, then you got like, that's a real problem. There's none of that. So nothing's terrible. Everything's okay. No recession here, but, and there are concerns I've got, and we have to understand what these concerns are to understand why we're still doing well even though there are these problems, and we'll get into that. So let's look at this. This is the first one. This is real disposable income. It's not bad. This is a nice, pleasant trend line between 2012 and February or March of 2020, before COVID came. Just take that line, extend it. We're a little bit low, maybe $500 billion, $300 billion. Nothing immense, but a little low. The second problem I see, maybe, is that the line is flattening out a little here. This was steeper. The slope here is steeper than the slope here. The tangent line's a little less steep here than there, suggesting income growth is slowing down. Well, if income growth is slowing down and spending is really good, what gives? Something's got to give here. You don't get something, where's the money coming from? There are two places the money's coming from. This is the first place the money's coming from. Savings. Americans don't save. We've never been big savers. You look 20 years ago, we're at the same place we were then, right? But this is pretty low by historical standards. This decline, there's an explanation for this in general. And what's going on is as the country gets wealthier, we can afford to borrow more money. Let's suppose it costs $30,000 a year to make a living. I'm making up a number. And you earn $30,000. Well, you can't borrow any money because you can't indebt yourself because you need all your money to live. If you make $40,000, you can borrow 10. If you make $50,000, you can borrow 20. So higher incomes, you can borrow more money. And there's increased financialization in the world. I mean, you think back 70 years or 80 years, maybe 90 years, they didn't have a 30-year mortgage. How'd you buy a house? You had to save up half a house or a full home price? That's crazy. So the existence of all kinds of financial instruments, insurance, life insurance, blah, 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 allows us to borrow more money. So a natural decline in savings rates is understandable at some level, but this is objectively low. We've only had it here right after Stimmy check 1, 2, and 3. Mistakes 1, 2, and 3. In retrospect, they should never have done it. The first one I get. The second one, I remember it was during Trump's lame duck in December of 20 before Biden came in Jan 21. And the economy looked weak and it seemed like we needed it, but they should have given it to the people who didn't have a job and not given it to all of us. Because by December of 2020, we knew that the job losses were over. Jobs losses were massive in March, April, and May, and that was it. After that, there were no real job losses. So they were low there, and they were low here just before the housing bust. That was the housing boom, when home prices were going crazy, and a little bit over there as well, before a bad recession. That was the 2000 dot-com, when the stock market was going crazy, right? So the stock market goes crazy, we don't save. The housing industry, home prices go crazy, we don't save. The government gives us money, we don't save. But short of that, this is the worst time we've been in. And it's been going down. It went from 6% to 4.5%. Had it not been for that, consumer spending, this number here wouldn't be quite as high. That's number one. Okay, what else is going on? What am I concerned? Another concern I have. So savings is one concern. This is my next concern. I'm not concerned about mortgage defaults and delinquencies in gold. I don't really care. They're flat. They're no better or worse than they were before COVID. And this doesn't matter. The trough doesn't matter because during COVID, we didn't have to pay our student loans. We got stimmy checks. And if you were unemployed, you often, in many cases, if you were lower income, you got income that was higher than your job income from the government in unemployment insurance, right? That wasn't a policy. It was, I think, accidental, but it certainly discouraged people from going to look for work, which exacerbated inflationary pressures. So this is not a problem. The credit cards and auto loans, I'm a little concerned, but there's a caveat here. There's two caveats. One, the reason they went up so much is bad underwriting during COVID. Banks, more so credit unions, have been lending too much to car buyers. So you have a mortgage on a car payment, still a leftover amount due on your car of $10,000. You buy a new car that cost $100, and they fold that $10,000 into the new car. You got a $110,000 note on your Ford 350. And that was going on a lot in 22, when things looked better on paper because you had this extra money and the stimmy check and you weren't paying your student loans, and suddenly you have $5,000 or $10,000 extra you didn't have before. So this lending was bad, and that's what's driving this. And now it's flat to coming down. Generally, although lower income people are struggling, remember this, we're going to come back to this about lower income people later on. The one that I worry most about is student loans. This is a big deal. Don't underestimate the student loan problem. Yeah, it's kids, blah, 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 but it's too many of them. There are already 2 million households that have defaulted on their they're delinquent on their student loans. Their wages are being garnished. You get the idea. This is not a happy story. And this problem will get much worse. There'll be at least 4 million, maybe 5 million more delinquencies in the student loan business. So you're going to have 5, 6, 7 million households that are delinquent on their student loans. Their FICO scores will fall by an average of 80 points. They're not going to be able to buy a car, rent an apartment, let alone buy a house. This is it'll go away, they'll figure it out, they'll pay, whatever, but this is not a trivial problem. Don't just poo-poo it. Now, we can argue good policy or bad with Trump. We can argue good policy or bad policy with Biden, extending it and trying to eliminate it, whatever. But this is a serious issue. There's this. So we have savings rates. What is going on next door? I mean, they're excited about economics. I got it. But it's a little more excitement than I'm used to, I'll be honest. So this is savings rates. This is household delinquencies and foreclosures and so on. And then there's credit cards. And on credit cards, I want you to look at the credit cards. Ignore the non-revolving. That's home loans, car payments, boat payments, airplanes if you're lucky enough to have an airplane, right? So whatever it is, you have an amortizing schedule that's paying off whatever it is on the red. Ignore it. It's the blue on the bottom that I care about. Why? Because when you make a purchase that's frivolous and relatively expensive, how do you pay for it? With a credit card. What, you bring a bag of cash when you buy a refrigerator for now $2,000? No, you put in your credit card. So if you look at credit card expenditures, it'll give you an insight into how much people are spending and what they're spending on. And the most important point is it's been flat. A little down, but flat. When it hits flat, you get a recession, you get a recession, you get a recession. For whatever reason, that's COVID. But nonetheless, people didn't borrow. They actually paid off their debts during COVID because we all thought we'd never work the rest of our lives. So this makes me nervous, but, there's a but here. And the but is BNPL, buy now, pay later. We don't know how big it is. There are several firms out there in the buy now, pay later space. And you must have seen this. Every time I buy something online now, an airplane ticket, it's $300. Oh, you qualify to make it in 4 monthly installments as opposed to one. And it won't even cost you any money. It'll be $75 a month for 4 months, and then you paid off your airplane ticket or whatever it is. How big this is, we don't know. So this is being pushed down because of that. But the BNPL companies, the most famous of which is Klarna, it's a Swedish company, they don't want to declare how much money people have on BNPL because it will reduce their FICO scores. And then people won't want to use BNPL to delay the payments. So there's this uncertainty of how big the BNPL thing is. We know people may be abusing BNPL from what it seems, but we don't really know. So this reduction may not be a reduction. It may be a false positive here, so I'm not too stressed, but a little concern here, a little concern here, a little concern there, but spending is good. And this is why. This is the primary reason. Yeah, savings rates have been reduced, and that's given us more firepower. Savings rates fall by 1%, that's some real money. There's real money there, that's $200 billion roughly, almost a full percent of GDP. But this is the real story. So what's going on here? This is household net worth. Forget the nonprofit organizations. Mark, where are you? You know nonprofit, they have no money. There's no profit, none. You have big salary, you own the airplane, but that's why you have no profit. Yeah, I know, you overpay them, but whatever. So it's households. So what's going on here? Look, before COVID, household net worth was $120 trillion. Now it's 180 trillion bucks. So it's gone up from almost 120 to almost 180. $60 trillion of net worth. 60 trillion bucks. So that's allowing us to do a lot more spending because you're feeling a lot happier about the world. Suddenly your 401k is a 501k is a 601k is a 701k. Your home is worth more money. Not so much now nationally, but the stock market keeps doing remarkably well. And it's this that's helping spending. So we're tipping into our savings a little bit. That's a little concerning. But this net worth is going up like bananas, like crazy, like mushrooms after a rainstorm, right? Now there's inflation, I got it, but the 120 is now real terms 150. At least half of that increase is real. So this is giving us a lot of firepower. And if you look at where that growth is coming from, 20 or 30 companies in the stock market, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, the big seven, and other ones like Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, and all those firms, these tech, Oracle, these AI firms, or AI adjacent firms, have gone up by a fortune, and they've probably contributed to consumer spending $300 billion bucks or $200 billion bucks more. So you've taken $200 billion from savings, and $200 or $300 billion from this, and that explains why our economy does so well. It's the rise in the stock market because of AI, reduction in savings rates a little bit, and that's what's propelling us. Can this continue? If AI continues, sure, it'll help. And next year it will get better because the OBBBA will have stimulative effects of 0.5% of GDP. So what I think goes on right now is that Q4, which we're in right now, and Q1 of next year are probably the weakest quarters we get for a while. Because Q2 and Q3 were terrific. Q1 stank because of front running of tariffs. Q2 was great because there was no front running of tariffs because imports collapsed in Q2. And Q3 has been quite strong because of consumer spending and more AI and so on. But Q4 and Q1 look weak, and then things begin to get better. Rates come down and so on. But now, let's think about this more. Who gets the money when the stock market goes up? Well, owners of stock, obviously. That's pretty obvious. But now think deeper about it. Who owns stock? Well, we know 55 or 56% of Americans own stock, either directly or through a 401k or an IRA or a Roth or whatever it is, pension plan of some sort. Now, but who really owns stock? Is it Job Sixpack and Josephine Sixpack who own 100 shares of something? Or is it like Jeff Bezos? It's Jeff Bezos. The richer you are, the more holding you have. So look at this slide, and this is going to impact you guys directly. This is consumer spending. 100% of consumer spending, all of it, broken down by income. Income, not wealth, income. Top 10% of earners. Right now, this is people earning above nationally average 260,000 bucks, between 250 and 275, somewhere around there. They are responsible for 50% of all consumer spending because their portfolios have done well and their business is doing well. Forget the house. The house doesn't matter. If you're a top 10%er, most of your wealth is not in your house. If you're solidly middle class, lower middle class, even upper middle class, your house is a relatively large percentage of your portfolio, right? But if you're rich, if you're worth 10 million bucks or 5 million bucks, your house doesn't really matter, right? It's a much smaller thing. This is a big deal. So what's going on is the stock market's doing well. Wealth, as a result, has gone up. And these top 10%ers are spending their brains out. I don't care about the poor people. I go to church to solve that problem, synagogue, whatever, charity, do good works, whatever you do. But that's the poorest 20%. They don't have any money. It doesn't really matter what they do. They don't have enough money to matter economically. We can care about them, but we don't care about them in a macroeconomic sense. Do you build homes for those people? No, not really, no. Ideally, you should be building homes for these people, maybe them, and then it kind of ends, right? Because they don't have enough money to buy a house. They don't matter. They don't matter to you either. Me, macroeconomically, you financially, unless you're building affordable, subsidized, multifam 4%ers or 9%ers or whatever. This guy's going off to build an affordable subdivision right now. He's just leaving now. He just got a call, FHFA just guaranteed his money, or Fannie or whatever. This is a big deal. That's a big deal. If you can cater to the rich people, I mean, I'm not giving you brilliant insight, they got plenty of money, they have plenty of wealth, they're driving our economy. Now, am I concerned this little narrow pedestal on the stool? A little, but look, it's been going on for 30 years in a row. This has been going up 30 years. It's policy, it's monetary policy, it's fiscal policy, it's globalization, it's the internet, it's a winner-take-all society, it's YouTube, it's a whole lot of things all agglomerating to produce this outcome. We could probably reverse it with mildly, at least with some policy, but there are just secular trends going on here too, right? But this is a big deal. So the rich are spending, the stock market's good, AI strong, savings is a little bit down. I'd like a more general overall situation. I'd like this number to come down a little bit, and this number to rise, and that number to rise. So how do I keep track of sales? I look at things like airlines. How are airlines doing? Delta came out with earnings, and United came out with earnings, and they're killing it. They've ripped the cover off the damn ball. Why? Because the front of the plane is full, and they don't care about the back of the plane at all. If you're flying coach, cattle class in the back, they don't give two hoots about you. They care about first class and the ones right behind first class. And when you go to Europe, they want you to rent a room with a shower in the airplane. I'm not joking. $30,000 to go to like Saudi Arabia or something. These are people are doing it. Well, that's going to pay for 10 seats in the back of the plane, right? The back of the plane's just paying for food or something, for catering. It's the front 20 seats, 30, 40 seats on the airplane that's making the money. And that's why Delta and United are making money. And that's why Southwest has totally changed their business model. They were a cheap airline catering to people who didn't want to spend any money and got free luggage. No, we're going to charge you for luggage. We're going to charge you for everything you want because it seems you want a lot. And if they didn't change their business model, they weren't going to make any money. So they had to change their business model because it's the rich that are driving the profits. And if they couldn't get rich people and business people that get in the damn plane, they weren't going to make any money. And then they ditched their whole program, 50 years of history, out the window, starting, I don't know, November 1st, Jan 1, whenever, next year, somewhere soon, Southwest changed their whole policy. Because of this. This is changing the behavior of retailers. It should be changing your behavior as well. Now, that's consumer spending, 70% of GDP. It's okay. It's okay because the rich are getting richer, because the stock market's doing well, primarily because of NVIDIA, and then the savings rates are a little bit depressed. Now, the savings rates are the reason we run a trade deficit. I'm going to repeat that. So low savings is what's generating our trade deficit. China has high levels of savings, they run a trade surplus. Japan has high levels of savings, they run a trade surplus. It's all to do with savings. If Trump really wanted to address the trade deficit in an immediate and focused fashion, he'd say, I'm making this up and I'm not saying it's good or bad policy, but he could say, dividend payments, tax-free. Interest payments, tax-free. 401k, let's increase the limit of how much you can contribute every year to your pension. 403b, Roth, so pensions, interest, dividend income, all of it's easier, lower taxes, whatever. It would increase savings, and every dollar in increased savings reduces the trade deficit. I know this sounds completely cockeyed, but this isn't economic theory. This is just simple accounting. It's accounting. I'll get into more detail later, but this is a preview of coming attractions. So we've gone through the household consumption. This is corporate investment in inventory. I want you to focus mostly on the orange color. It's the inventory to sales ratio for retailers. So retailers, the whole supply chain is designed so that when you walk into the store, you can buy a shirt or a tie or a pair of pants or a pair of socks or get some detergent or go to a concert or buy a hat or whatever it is, right? And you can see that currently the inventory to sales ratio is stuck at about 1.3. It's historically very low. Pre-COVID, for the 15 years, 20 years pre-COVID, the lowest it ever got was 1.35. It's lower than that today. Household firms aren't investing in inventory. This makes sense, right? Because what happened? During COVID, we invested in pavers, pools, and pergolas. Oh, and Pelotons. I can't think of anything more with a P, but I'll try. But you get my point. So we did it. We bought all this office furniture, because we were working from home, and we got carpeting, and we're done. Now, do you remember this? When inventory to sales crashed and hit 1.1 months. Do you remember this? Yeah, you do. I'll remind you. This was in late 2020, early 21, mid 20 maybe. It was hard to get toilet paper. You remember that? So what happened? We had stimmy checks. Our supply chains broke down. No one was going to work, and inflation just takes off like a bat out of hell. And then there's monetary policy goes to zero, interest rates, just egging us on for more inflation. Things get better. This is a deflationary process. Inventories recover. So now they're where they are. They're not going to get better. They're too low. We're not going to see increases in inventories, so inventory is not going to help GDP. Next, manufacturing. The Carolinas have reasonable amounts of manufacturing here, right? So this matters. Manufacturing is below 50. This is the Institute of Supply Management. They put out every month a Purchasing Managers Index. So it's the ISM PMI. And they asked purchasing managers of companies, hey, are things good? Are trucks coming and going? Are you busy? Is it a happy situation? Are the bays full of trucks? Are you doing buying lots of stuff and selling lots of stuff? And, well, if you're below 50, you're shrinking. So manufacturing has been a little recession now for years, since 23, maybe mid 22, you could argue whatever, 3 years of recession in manufacturing. So unsurprisingly, look at this, capacity utilization rates. How intensively are you using the plant that you currently have? Well, that's very intensive use. It gets to 82, 81, 82%. That's as high as it gets, because the rest of the plant that you have is old and it's expensive. It's either labor intensive or capital intensive, or it's heavy polluting, or it takes a long time to start it up or something like, imagine you work for me, right? And I give you a computer and I say, I'll come back in a couple days. You'll tell me how things are going, okay? So, I'm busy, I come back, Carl, how are things going? Well, I don't really know, Elliot. The IBM 286 computer you gave me is still booting up. So you just don't know, because that's old plant, or equipment in this case, but you get the point. So when you get above 79, 80%, you start to build a lot of plant. So with manufacturing in recession, and now utilization rates having gone to there, and now it's kind of leveled off at just, so it's at 77.5. This is not, given the recession and the outcome of the recession being low factory utilization rates, you're going to say to yourself, I'm not going to build plant. And that would be bad. But that's not what's happening. Because of elsewhere in the economy, luck and circumstance, we had Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's not construction of plant, it's construction of roads, sewers, police stations, schools, fire stations, broadband, right? Not private sector stuff. But then we had the CHIPS bill and the IRA bill. Whoosh! Massive spending. Again, we can argue good policy or bad. That's a different question. But there was massive spending, and now there's AI. So despite the fact that manufacturing is in recession and factory utilization rates are, by objective standards, pretty low, we're building a lot of stuff. So we got lucky. Luck matters. You can't plan on luck, but hey, the AI boom here is a very, very big deal. I hope AI continues and the AI benefits that we think will materialize we will see. If they materialize, and the big firms, the 10 or 20 big firms that are massively into it, like Oracle and so on, and NVIDIA and so on, Microsoft and Amazon and so on, they'll make a lot of money, they'll have invested their money wisely. It could turn out that the benefits are there, but they don't get them. And it also could be that there aren't going to be any benefits. There are a whole bunch of outcomes. I don't know the outcome. When it comes to AI, literally, you can read into it anything you want. You can find smart people who are in the area, a field of AI, and who'll tell you it's going to be great, and they'll say it's going to be worthless. So you can defend any position you want on AI. It's going to work, it ain't going to work, I don't know. If I knew, I'd tell you. But nonetheless, we're getting decent construction activity there. So that's the second term, corporate investment in inventory. We saw plant, pretty good. And this is equipment. And that's not bad. It's pretty decent. It's going up. This is, for example, Delta buying an airplane, or a seamstress or a tailor buying a sewing machine. These are good numbers. So you've got inventory that's been flat for a while, not going to help us, not going to hurt us. You got plant that should be hurting us, that's actually helping us because of three unrelated things historically, right? The CHIPS bill, the IRA bill, and now AI. And you've got equipment that's doing pretty decently. So this second term is not bad. It's fine, thank you very much. Could be better, but all in all, it's okay. So household consumption is good because they're rich. The inventory, plant, and equipment's okay. This is an okay economy. The third term is government spending. Oh, this gets to President Trump and what he does. He's very powerful. Congress has given him the permission to do what he wants. And we'll see how this turns out down the road. But let's go through his policies. He has 5 or 6 key policies. There's social policy. Okay, I'm not going there for obvious reasons. I'm an economist. I'm not a sociologist or a political scientist. The first 3, I separate the first 3 from the rest. These 3 here, energy deregulation and the bill that passed, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, I consider normal DC give and take. Your guy's in office, you're happy. Your guy's not in office, you're unhappy. If you're a Democrat, you don't like those first 3. If you're a Republican, you do. When Biden was in, if you're a Republican, you didn't like them, but now you do. That's just Washington, right? Let's go through them though. Energy says drill, baby, drill. That's the big policy. Fossil fuels, rah, rah, go. Look, utilizing our resources productively is a good thing. Am I in favor generally of taking the stuff out of the ground and selling it? Yeah, because it's a stranded asset otherwise, and we're just throwing the money away. So within limits, I'm generally in favor of it. There's a problem though. And the problem is President Trump is very Gnostic in his belief about energy. He loves fossil fuels and he hates renewables. Now, you may personally like that policy or not. The problem with this policy is we don't have enough energy. AI is going to suck the lifeblood out of our system with so much demand for energy. These data centers are immensely energy hungry. We need all the energy we can possibly get. So yeah, fossil fuels, go with it. Natural gas, whatever, gas plant liquids like ethane and methane and all those ethane types, natural gas, oil, sure, go with it. And at the same time, go with solar and go with wind. We need it all. Energy costs for consumers at businesses and consumer households have gone up because AI is sucking so much out of it. 2, will we produce more oil? And the answer is no, we will not produce more oil because we produce 13.6 million barrels of oil right now. That will be the year-end number. This year will average 13.6 million barrels. It's more than we've ever produced. We will not produce more because the price of oil is too low. Right now, the price of West Texas Intermediate, American oil, which is better, by the way, than Canadian, crappy Mexican or Venezuelan oil, because we're Americans. Even our oil is better than a foreign oil. We have what's called light and sweet. And everybody wants to be light and sweet, right? Who wants to be heavy and sour? That's the alternative, right? But kidding aside, it's $58 a barrel. They need in Texas, the biggest play is the Permian Basin in western Texas and eastern New Mexico. And they're only going to drill above $70 a barrel. They'll drill existing wells more as the pressure depletes because of the fracked well, right? But they're not going to drill new wells. Now, and moreover, they've learned how to drill really well. So the rigs that do the drilling, they have little feet and they move. They physically move from one drilling site to the next. This guy's actually now going to go to the Permian Basin and look at those wells that move. Moreover, they drill down, and now they can drill like 3 miles. And then they turn the drill bit around and drill 3 miles back. And they can keep doing this. Almost nobody works in the oil patch anymore. The number of rigs being used to drill continues to decline, yet production's never been higher because they're getting more and more and more efficient. It's like coal mining. 60, 70 years ago, 500,000 Americans were coal miners. And then it's been steadily declining for 70 years. And coal production peaked in like 2005, even though there was no one working coal mines anymore, because we had figured out how to mine coal more efficiently, whether it was blowing off the tops of mountains, going to the west, whether bigger deposits and so on, right? So this energy policy is not going to get us. The only thing that will get us is increased sales of natural gas, because we're now building lots of liquefaction plants where you turn natural gas into liquids. You cool it to like minus 12 billion degrees or something. It turns into a liquid, high pressure. You put it on a ship and you ship it to Europe or Asia. That's probably going to raise the price of natural gas here in the US, because there'll be more globally, we'll be selling more, exporting, so our price will come up a little bit towards the world price. That's the only benefit we're going to get. So it's neutral, I think, in the long run, with mildly detrimental energy. Next, deregulation. I'm an economist. I like deregulation. Who doesn't like deregulation? You can think of deregulation as, give me this, I'm going to take this. Think of deregulation as like a 20-pound weight on your head. You walk around at the course of a day, this weight gets heavier and heavier, and by 5 o'clock, your knees are buckling. And then one day, President Trump comes and says, oh, we're going to get rid of we're going to deregulate. And suddenly you get like 6 inches taller, you feel happier. But have no illusion that this deregulation is going to bump GDP up tomorrow morning. It won't. What it has done already is increased M&A activity. And that's helped the stock market, because Trump's, the DOJ and the federal FTC have been very amenable towards mergers. So just last week, a couple of banks merged up, right? And a couple weeks earlier, another two, Comerica, and I forgot which other bank merged. So you're getting mergers and acquisitions on a much more rapid pace now, because they're more amenable and the administration is giving permission. That's going to drive up stock prices, because you're going to get rid of inefficiencies, lay off some workers, and jack earnings up. So that's the immediate help, which helps consumer spending. But in terms of GDP growth, in terms of labor productivity, you're not going to get it that fast. Why? Well, let me give you an example. I go to you, Muggsy, and I say to you, look, you work for me now, and I'm a health nut, and we're going to do exercises and jumping jacks. And if you can do a handstand, I will double your pay. Anybody, handstand. How long will it take you to learn to do a handstand? An hour? A day?
Easy, man.
Wow, okay, wow, bad guy to pick. But the point is, it takes time. You want to take advantage of this so you've had this much of the world to operate on because of regulation. And now there's deregulation. You can work on this much of the world. That's a huge increase. But you have to learn Spanish. You have to learn a new software language. Whatever it is, you got to learn some new stuff. It takes you a year, 2 years, 6 months, 9 months. So there'll be a huge benefit from this dereg, but it ain't going to happen tomorrow. It's too quick. We'll get there. And the negative of deregulation is sometimes things go wrong. Let me explain. Let's think. How many of you, when you were a child, like 10, not 2, but 10 or 11 or 9, were left alone as children? Well, a lot of you, yeah, me too. I don't know, our parents would now be in jail, right, for child abuse. My parents also beat me, but I don't want to talk about that now. But the point is, we were left alone. Now it's illegal to do it. The kid's 17, no, you have to stay there. They need a babysitter, for Christ's sake. But imagine you and me, a little bit entrepreneurial, fun-loving guys with a chemistry set. You got it. You know what's gonna happen next. Occasionally, the house burns down. Regulators are like parents. They're not great, and they make mistakes, plenty of them. That's why I have my psychiatrist, but that's a separate conversation. But things go wrong. So things went wrong in 08, 09, right? Our banking system collapsed because of deregulation earlier when Clinton deregulated banks and insurance, getting rid of Glass-Steagall that came in the 30s in the aftermath of the Great Depression. He gets rid of it, and 15 years later, our banking system goes to hell in a handbasket. So, am I in favor of deregulation? Yes. Do I want to see it? Yes. Do I want to see the regulators now focusing on what's to regulate? Yeah, I don't want them to take a vacation. If they do, we could have a problem. So energy, kind of neutral-ish. Deregulation, I'm in favor of. The OBBBA, he's extending the tax cuts he passed in Trump 1.0. In Trump 1.0, he lowered corporate and personal taxes. He lowered corporate taxes forever, or until Congress changes it, and personal taxes for 9 years, and it expires December 31st of this year. The OBBBA primarily extended those tax cuts. It also made tips a little bit tax-free, overtime wages tax-free. If you buy an American car, your interest on your car payment is deductible. I'm not sure how they define an American car. Is it the nameplate, the drivetrain, the percentage of labor, the percentage of manufactured parts? It's complicated, but I don't know how they decide it, but whatever. Those are small potatoes. They're also trying to cut Medicaid. That's what the whole closure is about now, right? Obamacare and Medicaid. We'll see where that goes. On one hand, I'm excited that government's trying to reduce entitlements. On the other hand, if it doesn't work and they can't do it, that's a problem too. So there's problems and good news here on both sides here, right? But OBBA's, there's also some positive investment decisions that come in 26. You can expense things rather than depreciate research and development and some construction activity, if I'm not mistaken. That's why the OBBA in 26 will be stimulative to about 0.5% of GDP, going down forward, but in 26 it'll be quite stimulative. So it raises the deficit, yeah, whatever, he's not the first guy to do that. So the first thing, energy, yeah, whatever. The second thing, yeah, it's good. The third thing, yeah, whatever, neutral, whatever. So these are all normal stuff. Immigration and tariffs are a whole new world. They're a whole new thing. And I think we'll talk about tariffs later. Let's talk about immigration first. Of the two, I am firmly convinced this is much more important than this one. Tariffs are yeah, whatever. We'll get into them. They're serious. I know they're hurting your costs. They're raising everything. I got it. It ain't a big deal, let me tell you. In the long run, immigration's much bigger. Now, we don't know much about immigration. Let's do some pictures. This is deportations under Obama, from 2000 to today. And you can see Obama comes in January of 9, and he stays 8 years through the end of 16. Deportations were biggest under Obama, so he's the king of deportations. But there's a catch. When Obama was president, the border with Mexico was relatively open. Not open like Biden open, but relatively open. So these people would come into the country illegally, and then Obama would deport them. 9, 10, yeah. Hopefully they don't count to 100. Okay. 100 bottles of beer, yeah, okay. So we've had deportations before, but now it's different because the border's closed, right? So keep this in mind. Now, let's look here. This is apprehension. So how many people are they capturing, as ICE or whoever it is, capturing at the Mexican border? You can see it was pretty intense during Biden. There were a lot of people, millions coming in, right? Now it's 0. The border's effectively closed. It is friggin' closed. I'm not sure I had that much faith he could do this, but to his credit, he has. And I think by and large, America's very pleased with this outcome, that the border's closed. I know we had open borders with Biden, and the survey data shows Americans were very unhappy. It was the border and it was inflation and maybe Biden's mental situation, that collectively hammered him, right? Trump closed the border. Okay, you see that. And you can even see here, how many people, 60,000, 30,000, 9,000, going through the Darien Gap in Panama, where there are hyenas, eating you and stuff, and snakes that'll suck the life out of you. It's like the world's most dangerous place. But you got to get from there to Mexico to get to America and try and get in, in San Diego or something, right? So now the problem is, who are you kicking out? Now you're kicking out people who've lived here for a while and who generally are working. I spoke to a builder yesterday who builds near Athens, Georgia. Bad, I know, bad. You don't like them. They're competitive. Bad dogs, bad dog, bad dog. Okay, but he said he lost 2 workers already on his cruise to ICE deportations. So he's struggling as a result. So that's the thing that's going on. Now, we don't know how many people are being deported. We also don't know how many people are self-deporting, because you don't want to end up as an illegal winding up in a jail in El Salvador, right? You just don't. So you self-deport, and the government gives you $1,000 in an airplane ticket, from what I understand. Friends tell me. I'm asking for a friend, yeah. So this is a big deal. There may well be enough deportations that the US loses population on the year ending June 30th, 26. They do annual population from July 1st to June 30th, so it's mid-year to mid-year. That's how they count population. We may lose population. The US in 250 years has never lost population, ever. We didn't lose it during the Civil War or the war between the states. We didn't lose it in World War I. We didn't lose it during the Spanish influenza right around World War I, 1918. So the end of the World War I leading into the Spanish flu, which was neither a flu nor Spanish, but whatever. We didn't lose it during COVID, but we may well lose it now. We've never experienced this. This will have all kinds of, and if this persists over time, there will be some very serious negative consequences that result from this. GDP growth will come down, wage growth will go up. It'll be an inflationary shock and a growth decline. So it's very stagflationary, depending on how many people leave, right? So we'll see. But this has very negative, long-term ramifications. Here's just one of them. Debt to GDP, debt per person goes up if there are fewer people. And just think about that, right? So this is a big deal. Now, let's go back and talk about let's go back, oops, wrong direction. Let's now go talk about tariffs. I talked a little bit about tariffs already, but let's see the data. So this is migrant prosecutions. This is fascinating. So we're looking at the whole thing, whether it's whatever it's a felony or misdemeanor, we don't care right now. The point is, we're catching almost nobody there. You see that. But the percentage that are being tried is very high. So our policies are much more serious, and that's why no one's coming to the States illegally. Because the chance of ending up in the legal system is pretty high. Not just being kicked out, but worse, right? Now, let's talk about tariffs. So under Trump 1, tariffs did go up. Tariffs went from here to there. A pretty small increase. Simultaneously, or actually a year before that, he had the father of OBBBA, when he cut corporate taxes permanently and temporarily cut personal income taxes. Now he extended the personal income taxes in OBBBA. So he had a huge tax cut and a little increase in tariffs, okay? Now, by contrast, you have huge increase in tariffs, not that, but that, and a mild tax cut. So don't think, oh, Trump won, we had tariffs and a tax cut, and it was all good. So now we're having tariffs and a tax cut, it'll be fine. No. Don't think that way, because then the tax cuts were big and the tariff was small. Now the tariff is huge and the tax cut's tiny. So the sizes are vastly different. So this is a much more negative shock to the system. That was a positive shock. This is a negative shock, right? So differently. Now, how important is this? Well, let's suppose a tariff is 10%. It's 15 now, but it bounced around. Say it's 10%. And imports of goods, not services, they're not taxed, is 10% of GDP. So 10% times 10% is what? 1%. So on the surface, ballpark, 1% increase in inflation because of tariffs. It'll be a little more because domestically made goods that compete with imported goods that now have a tariff can jack their price up, like steel and aluminum. Oh, the steel firms and aluminum firms are going to jack their prices up because the imported steel is more expensive, so they can't compete. So I can charge, if you were an Indian firm supplying steel and you were charging, I don't know, $500 for a rolled steel thing, and I was charging $5, now you're charging $9 because the tariff for $8 or whatever, I can charge $650 and still undercut you. So you're going to see an increase in the cost of domestically made stuff that competes with imported stuff. So the tariff maybe jacked inflation up 1.5%. This isn't so big. Did tariffs create the depression of 1929 with Smoot-Hawley? No. Did it make it worse? Yeah. Will this cause a recession? No. Tariffs aren't going to cause a recession. They'll cause a misallocation of resources and slow economic growth. I'll explain to you in a couple of seconds how this happens. But it's not going to cause a recession. It's not going to cause massive inflation. Don't lose too much sleep over the macroeconomic impacts of that. Now, why does it slow economic growth? Let me explain. Let's suppose America makes two things. They make pencils, you, a pencil manufacturer, and you make airplanes, airframes, the fuselages, the big plane thing. It's all we make. Low-tech, good-for-nothing pencils, and spectacularly productive, high labor productivity, high profit margin airplanes, except when the doors blow out or the planes crash. But we'll ignore those problems for now. Now, we have a lot of imports of pencils from foreign countries, so you need to hire a lobbyist. You hire this guy here. He takes bags of cash, unmarked bills, non-sequential serial numbers, high denomination notes. That's what I like to get myself. And he gives it to politicians, and then they pass a bill here in America that says imports of pencils now 1,000% tariff. So instead of costing $1, they're $10 now. You're a happy camper. You now raise your price from $1 to $9 a pencil, undercut the importers, stop doing any research and development, use crappy graphite and cheap wood on the pencils because there's no competition.